All right, we begin, though, with the push to save more lives in the coronavirus pandemic as the U.S. hits a tragic milestone.
More than 700,000 Americans have now died from COVID-19. The U.S. surpassed that total late Friday, with nearly 6,000 more people dying of the virus over the weekend. That means as of this morning, nearly 706,000 Americans have died from COVID-19. That's more than the population of the entire city of Boston. For health experts, the key to preventing more deaths lies with the vaccine. The White House says more than 1.2 million doses were handed out yesterday. That's the highest increase in a month. And now the New York Times reports that Johnson & Johnson plans to apply for emergency use authorization for its booster shot this week. NBC News health and medical reporter Erica Edwards is following the top pandemic headlines for us this morning. So, Erica, let's start there with J&J. What do we know about the booster shots for Johnson & Johnson and its efficacy?
Hey, good morning, Joe. So the CDC recently compared all three vaccines that we have, finding that the Johnson & Johnson shot is 71% effective in keeping people out of the hospital. Now, that's a significant benefit, right? But the Pfizer vaccine was found to be 88% effective. Moderna is 93% effective. Johnson & Johnson, however, also released data recently finding that a second dose boosted the effectiveness against symptoms. Administration is already expected to meet next Friday, October 15th, to discuss emergency use authorization for a booster shot of Johnson & Johnson's vaccine. Joe?
So, Erica, it is October. The weather's getting colder, as many may have noticed. A lot of us are, yes, thinking about the holidays. That includes the CDC. They release recommendations on how to have safe holiday parties, whether you're wearing an ugly sweater or not. So what are they saying about that?
So the new CDC guidelines really seem to stress good airflow if you're going to be gathering indoors. They say open up all of the windows, put a fan in one of those windows to keep fresh air circulating. Other tips are pretty standard. Get vaccinated if you're traveling. Stay masked indoors if you're in an area with high levels of community transmission, or, of course, celebrate online virtually, which, of course, we did a lot last. Sweaters, just like you suggested. It's going to be pretty chilly with all those windows open. Of course, that last tip was from me, not the CDC. Joe?
All right. And a lot of parents do hope younger kids get vaccinated by the holidays. If you're in California, children will soon have to get vaccinated to go to school. It's the first such mandate like that in the country. So what do parents need to know about this requirement?
Yeah, so California Governor Gavin Newsom made this announcement last Friday, saying that kids in both public and private schools will need to be vaccinated against COVID-19 to attend class. Now, while that's the first in the country for COVID-19, it's not the first vaccine mandate for school children. Kids already have to get the chickenpox shots, measles, mumps, rubella vaccines to attend school. Now, Gavin Newsom's plan is not going to be immediate. First of all, there's no vaccine for kids under age 12. The vaccine for kids between the ages of 12 and 15 is used under emergency use authorization only. Newsom said that his plan will only go into effect pending FDA full approval. Here's what he had to say.
We intend to do that once the FDA has fully approved the vaccine, which will give us time to work with districts, give us time to work with parents and educators to build more trust and confidence and build out a logistics so that we can deliver on what we are promoting here today.
Now, given that time frame, the requirement could go into effect for some kids January 1st. Joe?
All right, Erica, with the latest COVID headlines, thank you so much.
Now, intensive care units at several hospitals have remained at full capacity for over a year. Staffing shortages and limited treatment options have left hospitals struggling to care for some of their sickest patients. The result, fatigued employees and near-death experiences. NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster joins us now from outside Oakland Hospital in Marshall, Michigan with more. Shaq, good morning. So I know this hospital that you're at has been at full capacity since October 2020. I mean, really think about that, full capacity since then. But the reason why isn't always just COVID surges or physical beds. What are doctors saying is the reason, and what kind of impact is that having?
Yes, Savannah, a lot of factors go into this. And let's just underscore again what you just said. This hospital at or above capacity for more than a year at this point. We look back and there was actually an article when they first reached capacity, and that was exactly a year ago. And when you talk to doctors about exactly why they're dealing with this, there's many factors that go into place here. One is the idea that COVID patients require that intensive care for longer periods of time than most patients who go into the ICU. So you have patients here for days and weeks at a time. You combine that with the staffing shortages that you're seeing all across the country. It really leads to a situation where this is an ICU that has about 16 beds. It's a small hospital, a small ICU ward. It's not just the fact that they need more beds, but they need more staff that can help supply and provide that patient care as you have patients here for that extended period of time, Savannah.
So, Shaq, I think the combination of the fact that they need more staff, so obviously that means so much is falling on the staff that is there. And then, of course, just coupled with what it is that they're dealing with every day, I can't imagine that morale is very good. I mean, how are the nurses there doing? How is this issue affecting them?
Yeah, you know, doctors tell the story of how, because this is COVID, when they go into one ICU room, they're putting on new scrubs, they're putting on new PPE, and then leaving the room and taking it out. It's much more intense and much more of a grind than any other patient that they normally have to deal with in an ICU. I want you to listen to what the doctor here told me just yesterday in the Zoom interview about the morale and what they're experiencing with this surge and running at that full capacity for more than a year.
It feels like deja vu. It feels like Groundhog Day. Like every day it's like a living the same day over and over. It's like, when is this going to change? You know, again, you know, people, I think the morale is good. I mean, in the sense that, look, this is our job. We understand that we're doing a very, you know, we're in critical care because we like to take care of sick people, but we're tired. I mean, we are tired. We are fatigued. That's the word I would say. I don't think that morale is down in the pits, but we're tired.
He's the critical care physician here. You know, he also told one story of how the situation, because staff are being so overburdened, it's a situation where when one is out, when one gets sick or one goes on vacation, you have fewer people willing to fill in that gap because everyone is working at that full capacity. It's just the effects of when you have an ICU like this running at that high level for so long. It has a widespread effect on not only the patients, but also the staff, Savannah.
Absolutely. And I know that there are ripple effects from this, Shaq, that this one packed ICU affects surrounding hospitals and vice versa. I know, in fact, one patient almost died this weekend right there at Oakland Hospital where you are. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the impact of the entire system and the strain this is having on the entire system. When a small hospital like this has a patient that they need to provide care for that is only available at a larger hospital, it leads to some risky situations. Listen to what the doctor told me yesterday.
I called 8 hospitals to get that patient transferred, and I couldn't find anybody to accept the patient. So this is the stress that it puts on it. I have a patient that I have a treatment that I can offer them at another hospital. I can't get them there. And so I'm going to have to call the wife and say, look, there's a very high likelihood your husband will die of kidney failure because I can't transfer him. I mean, it's incredibly stressful. Thankfully, a bed opened up in one of our local hospitals. We were able to transfer him. But that's a situation that I was scrambling yesterday morning. What do I do here with this patient that I need to treat? But there's nothing I can do.
Savannah, that story really just underscores the idea that even if you don't have patients dying from COVID, because these hospitals are being so strained, the ripple effect that has where patients are dying of things that they normally wouldn't be dying from, or at least they're put at risk of dying from those things when there's treatments available, but not the space or staff to take care of these people. Right. Savannah?
Just heartbreaking. Tough to hear. Shaquille Brewster, thank you so much.
In Washington, another busy week ahead as Democrats in Congress work to find agreement on the president's economic agenda.
Yeah, that's right. The goal, uniting the divided Democratic caucus in order to pass the president's multi-trillion-dollar social safety net bill, also known as that human infrastructure bill, and also pass the bipartisan infrastructure deal. All sides of the Democratic Party are digging in their heels, and all eyes have been on Senators Manchin and Sinema holding strong. Now, Speaker Pelosi has set a new deadline of October 31st to pass both bills.
Here with a look at what's ahead this week, NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale. So, Ali, we saw how things collapsed last week over disagreements with these two bills, largely over the price tag of the larger bill. What needs to happen to get both these bills over the finish line and to get them to the president's desk to be signed into law?
Joe, it looks like the answer is more negotiating. When we finally left the Hill after a very long week on Friday, one of the last conversations I had was with Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, who's leading the Progressive Caucus through these negotiations. And what I heard from her after a meeting that she had with her entire caucus was that their task from the president was to make sure that they knew what policy priorities they needed in this bill. Their goal, as it has been in recent days, is to shift the conversation away from this conversation about a price tag and instead to a conversation about the policy priorities. We saw that spill into the Sunday shows as we saw progressives really flood the zone while moderates stayed mum over the weekend. Take a listen to some of those conversations that we heard.
I do believe that both bills are going to pass, and I think that both bills, a big reason both bills are going to pass is because the American people supported an enormous caucus of 95 House progressives to defend these kinds of investments.
This is a negotiation. We don't all see this exactly the same way. And so it isn't enough to say, oh, we'll find an agreement. We need to understand what exactly that agreement is going to be. Negotiations are hard. Hard stuff is hard to do. And we have to remember that and just kind of keep on pushing forward and finding that path forward that all 50 of us in the Senate can agree on.
So you're hearing notes of optimism there. That's because most Democrats agree they want to march in lockstep forward on this agenda. At the same time, what you didn't hear was much from the moderate perspective, specifically the two moderates in the Senate who have been at the center of this entire thing, Senators Manchin and Sinema. Sinema has been home in Arizona. We know that she's been hearing from activists, certainly hearing from her constituents as well as in the national conversation. At the same time, we know their price tag, but we don't know much else about this. So we're in the waiting game on that.
So, Ali, as you've just laid out, this has really been a fight within the Democratic Party. But then Republicans in the House and Senate have kind of been hands-off in this process. And now, though, they say Democrats aren't including them in these latest negotiations. First, let's listen, and then we'll talk on the other side.
What we're seeing is like watching an episode of The Twilight Zone. I thought Joe Biden went to the Hill on Friday to try to get that bipartisan infrastructure bill passed, and instead he surrendered to the radical wing of his party. And now you have this big government socialism, reckless spending bill being basically used to hold hostage the things that the American people want: are roads and bridges, highways, all of those things.
So, Ali, where is the GOP in this process?
Look, as I've been talking to Republican sources on the Hill, they've been sort of happy over the course of the last week to sit back. They enjoyed the idea that Democrats were in disarray. They can probably still keep pushing that narrative. The point where that becomes untenable is when and if Democrats actually end up getting this done. Democrats continue to remind that this is sort of a once-in-career opportunity for many of these lawmakers to do a lot of big structural change throughout different parts of the economy, not just on climate change, but also in things like child care and elder care. Republicans, though, for now, while this process still seems messy, are going to continue to try to make hay of it. And frankly, as I was passing Republicans on the halls of Congress the other day, they were all just happy to sit back, hands off, and let the process play out.
And quickly, Ali, on this last one, the big question now, the debt limit needs to be raised by mid-month. Where do things stand with that?
There have been so many deadlines floating around on the Hill, Joe, but this is the one that we've been barreling towards that has the most consequences. October 18th or October 19th, that's when the Treasury Department estimates that the U.S. line of credit will run out. That's the deadline that we're operating under right now. Democrats in the Senate have said that they are fine going it alone. Republicans want that. The question is, Republicans want them to go it alone in a very specific way. They want Democrats to raise the debt ceiling through reconciliation. That's something that Democratic leadership has said is a non-starter. They've tried to do this a few other ways through simple majorities. Republicans have continued to block them. That sort of leaves us in the planning mode here as we start Monday on the Hill.
All right, Ali Vitale, busy week ahead. Thanks, Ali.
Thank you. And now Meet the Press covered a range of topics yesterday, from what we were just talking about, the status of congressional negotiations, to the backlash against Facebook. Here's a look at the highlights and more with moderator Chuck Todd.
Well, good morning, Savannah and Joe. On this week's Meet the Press, President Biden gave progressives a win by delaying a vote on the big infrastructure package. I spoke with Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders and White House senior advisor Cedric Richmond. Plus, the revelations from Facebook and that whistleblower. I sat down with two reporters, Jeff Horwitz and Kara Swisher, to tease apart that latest reporting as well. Here are some of the most important answers from Meet the Press Compressed.
There's an enormous amount of trust in the Democratic Party. But more importantly, there's a lot of focus on the American families. And look, people will be disappointed. People will not get everything they want. That is the art of legislating. But the goal here is to get both bills. And we're going to fight until we get both bills. And that's the statement from the president. Human infrastructure is important, and physical infrastructure is important. So we're going to do both.
There are a lot of people who are negotiating with Senator Sinema. She has been in the White House, as I understand it, on numerous occasions. I think the people of Arizona are beginning to stand up and show some impatience there and saying, you know, Senator, join the team here. Let's get something done on reconciliation. So I think, look, you know, sometimes, Chuck, in all due respect, the media thinks this is the Red Sox playing the Yankees. It is not. This is a long and complicated process which is dealing with the most consequential piece of legislation probably since the New Deal and the Great Depression. It's a big deal, and it's not going to happen overnight. And the president is absolutely right. It doesn't matter whether it's next week or 3 weeks from now. What matters is that we finally address the problems facing working families. That's what matters.
Well, I was just going to say, deadlines are all artificial in your mind right now?
Of course they are. What matters is that we do it, and we do it well. And when we do both of these pieces of legislation, I think the American people are going to say, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Democrats in the Congress. And by the way, where the hell were the Republicans in not having the guts to stand up to powerful special interests?
This is coming from inside of Facebook. How under siege are they as a company right now?
So we have heard that they actually have taken pretty much all of their researchers and basically blamed them for this. It's a very weird mentality over there. They have been kind of throwing those people under the bus, the people that they asked to understand the platform's role in the world. And that's a very kind of aggressive thing for them.
This is a company whose employees didn't really leak for a long, long time, but you're seeing it all over tech. It's not just here. It's people are like, just a second, what we're doing is damaging. It's not, you know, I did an interview with Mark Benioff a couple of years ago. He called it cigarettes. It's not precisely cigarettes, is it? It's also gambling. It might be opiates. It might be other things. But the people inside those companies are recognizing that this company doesn't anticipate consequences and then tries to clean it up later, and then not very well.
Thanks to Chuck Todd for that Meet the Press wrap. Later yesterday, that Facebook whistleblower was revealed on 60 Minutes as former employee Frances Haugen. Her interview is sparking a fresh round of scrutiny for the tech giant. Haugen worked as a product manager on Facebook's civic misinformation team. She claims the social media giant's priorities are causing severe harm to the public. In the interview, she explained why she felt the need to speak out against Facebook.
The thing I saw at Facebook over and over again was there were conflicts of interest between what was good for the public and what was good for Facebook. And Facebook over and over again chose to optimize for its own interests, like making more money. When we live in an information environment that is full of angry, hateful, polarizing content, it erodes our civic trust, it erodes our faith in each other, it erodes our ability to want to care for each other. The version of Facebook that exists today is tearing our societies apart and causing ethnic violence around the world.
Facebook issued a response to the 60 Minutes report saying, in part, every day our teams have to balance protecting the right of billions of people to express themselves openly with the need to keep our platform a safe and positive place. We continue to make significant improvements to tackle the spread of misinformation and harmful content. To suggest we encourage bad content and do nothing is just not true. Now, Frances Haugen is not done speaking out. She's scheduled to testify in front of a Senate subcommittee tomorrow.
Now to the urgent effort to contain a massive oil spill off the coast of California. Officials say a pipeline failure caused oil to pour into the Pacific, forcing beach closures and endangering some of the region's precious wildlife. NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa has the latest.
Joe and Savannah, this is the oily goop animals are up against. In this pond here, several fish trapped beneath the oil-coated surface. And keep in mind, this is a tiny fraction of the miles of beach impacted. A race against time. Authorities frantically working to slow the spread of a major oil spill. A pipeline off the coast of Orange County in Southern California dumping 126,000 gallons of oil into the Pacific, spanning 13 square miles.
We are in the midst of a potential ecological disaster here.
The leak began Saturday. The pipeline company says the line has been shut down, but they do not know what caused it to fail.
We currently have divers on location at the potential source site. We are investigating the source and potential cause.
A major concern, wildlife. Toxic globs washing ashore and infiltrating treasured wetlands.
We've already received reports of many animals being covered in oil.
Health officials warning it could be harmful to humans, too. The goopy mess, a stain to Southern California's typically pristine beaches. But what you can't see, the awful smell. It will give you a headache in minutes. The area seeing an influx of visitors because of the iconic Pacific Air Show, which was canceled. Many now passing time at area beaches, despite calls to avoid the sand and the sea. People are in the water. Does that concern you?
It does concern me. The toxic fumes are present in the air, and it might be impactful to your health.
An ecological nightmare growing with each wave. The pipeline is beneath 80 to 100 feet of water, making it difficult for divers to pinpoint the source. Amplify Energy says they inspected the pipeline just last week. Joe and Savannah.
All right, Emily Aketa, thank you for bringing us that report.
Let's get a check on your morning news now weather.
Which means it's time for Bill Cairns to join us. Hey, Bill, good morning.
Hey, good morning. I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend. It kind of ended on a wet note. If you're watching, especially that football game last night in Foxborough with Brady returning, it was raining pretty good, and it continues this morning. It's probably the worst weather we have in the country is in areas of New England. You can see all the rain still moving through, especially areas from Providence to Boston. And then there's another batch in central Pennsylvania, and there's even more rain back in Michigan and central Michigan. And then Atlanta southwards has some scattered storms. So here's how it's going to play out the rest of today. The steady rains will continue from Albany through Massachusetts, southern New Hampshire, Vermont, too, also down through Boston. So definitely some slow travel in those areas. We will have hit and miss showers and storms tomorrow around Atlanta. So if you have any travel plans through Atlanta or the airport, you could have some significant delays to deal with. And the heaviest rains, if we're going to get localized flooding, would be in southern portions of Alabama. That's where we could see some of the strongest storms. Again, this is tomorrow afternoon. This is not for today. Today's heaviest rain is up in areas of New England. So the forecast say, besides the rainy weather I just talked about, we really have to look at how warm it still is. I mean, we're now in October, and we're still in the 80s from Boise to Billings, all through the Central Plains. Southern Texas is still in the 90s, and the warm weather continues into Tuesday. D.C. at 80 degrees, Billings at 85 degrees. I mean, this October is starting very, very warm. You guys forget, I mean, you can notice the sun is setting earlier each and every day, but we're supposed to be getting much cooler than what we are. It'll be interesting. This could go down as a very, very warm October, maybe even challenging records.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.